Howdy folks, and welcome back to World of Warships with Rear Admiral Jingles, sponsored today by NordVPN. This time, however, because it's Christmas, we have an even better deal to offer you. For a limited time, if you go to nordvpn.com/jingles, or use the coupon code JINGLES during sign-up, you get 81% off a 3-year subscription plan, plus 2 gifts, 4 extra months, and the NordPass Password Manager app, which combined are worth just a hair under $200. I've been using Nord myself now to keep my online activities private. I have absolutely no regrets. I can definitely recommend it, especially at this kind of price. And it has been particularly useful, at least in my case, to get around the geographical blocking imposed by certain online video streaming services who aren't rolling out their content in my country of residence until next year. So, once again, nordvpn.com/jingles, or just use the coupon code JINGLES during sign-up and get yourself 81% off a 3-year subscription. Plus, for absolutely no extra charge, the NordPass Password Manager app and 4 extra months for free. And now, back to Camouflage Cat here in the British Tier 9 destroyer, HMS Jutland. And did anybody else notice the replay bugs there? Just in case, let me just go back and point them out for you. Right at the start of the battle, if you look at the minimap, you can see that there are supposed to be 2 ships in front of Camouflage Cat's Jutland, a Sinop and a Charles Martel. But where the hell are they? They are actually there. There's one of them unloading his guns, but you just can't see them. The enemy team can see them. Oh, the enemy team have no problem seeing and shooting at them. And I'm positive that during the battle itself, Camouflage Cat could see them, but here in the replay, nothing. I think that's the Sinop up ahead. I've just taken over the camera here, trying to figure out what the hell's going on. As the Chapayev and the Frederick the Great to the south unload on, I'm pretty sure it is the Sinop, with the Charles Martel to the rear. Yep, the Sinop's taking hits. Charles Martel is taking hits and returning fire. The Sinop is taking even more hits. Yeah, bizarre. But just a replay bug. Anyway, handing control of the camera back over to Camouflage Cat. That is one exceptionally brave Chapayev. Either that, or he doesn't like being in a Tier 9 battle. And he's the biggest threat to Camouflage Cat because the Chapayev is a radar cruiser, which is, of course, why Camouflage Cat has dumped his torpedoes in the Chapayev's direction, and why Camouflage Cat is now shooting to attract the attention of the Chapayev, troll him into turning his ship to bring all of his guns to bear on this pesky destroyer, thereby ensuring that he runs into all of those torpedoes. Although, to be honest, a Chapayev, which is a light cruiser, turning broadside like that in front of a Charles Martel and a Sinop was probably not going to last for too much longer anyway. So that's good news. Even better news is that despite the fact that the torpedoes were spotted, the Frederick the Great ran into them as well anyway. But what is not good news is that despite the loss of the Chapayev, the team are still behind because they've lost 2 ships of their own already. And I've just noticed yet another little replay bug occurring, this time on the minimap. Strap yourselves in and feast your eyes on this one. Check out the friendly Helena just casually creeping around the island to the southeast. And where did he go? There he is! Just, what the hell? Go home, World of Warships, you're drunk. Well anyway, can we focus on Camouflage Cat here, please? Well, I'm trying, but the replay isn't exactly making it easy. Well anyway, despite the fact that the Frederick the Great's guns aren't actually pointing at him, Camouflage Cat decides to err on the side of caution and smokes up, because that is a German battleship and he may already be within range of his secondary gun batteries. He's peppering the Frederick the Great superstructure with his high explosive shells, although he's probably not going to do a huge amount of damage with them, although he is setting a couple of fires, because these are only 4.5-inch guns, 113mm in calibre, which means that even with the IFHE skill, the high explosive shells only have 24mm of penetration. So the only place he can damage a battleship of Tier 8 or higher is in the superstructure. Actually, you know, now I come to think of it, that means that the Jutland and the Daring can't actually penetrate the bow, stern or deck plating of Tier 6 or 7 battleships either. Because that's 25mm. And 25mm, of course, is also an important armour threshold for Tier 8, 9 and 10 cruisers. So the Jutland even with the IFHE skill, and this is true of the daring at tier 10 as well, can only really set fires or damage the superstructure of tier 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10 battleships, or tier 8, 9 or 10 cruisers. And if it doesn't take the IFHE skill, it has to use its armour piercing to penetrate the plating of tier 8, 9 and 10 destroyers. All of which is a fairly long-winded way of saying that if you have the Jutland or the Daring at tier 10 and you do not have the IFHE skill, your high explosive shells are pretty much useless against 80% of the ships that you're going to fight. In practice, what that means is you learn when to fire armour piercing at your targets, or you just don't do a lot of damage at all. There were other ships in the game that suffered from this problem as well. Japanese gunboats, Akazuki, Kitakaze, Harugamo. Can anybody remind me what happened to them? Oh yes, they all got the high explosive buff, didn't they? So they didn't need to take the IFHE skill. And if they did, they were capable of terrorising battleships. Don't hold your breath waiting for that to happen to this ship. Although maybe the problem will solve itself with the proposed changes to the IFHE skill on the development blog. The TLDR version is that you're going to round up for your penetration rather than rounding down, which is what currently happens, which means that with the IFHE skill, the Jutland and the Daring would be able to penetrate 25mm of plating. Hooray! Except all tier 8, 9 and 10 cruisers are receiving at least 27mm of plating, so you're still fucked. Team's not doing particularly well today, is it? They've got no caps. They're down to 105 points. The enemy team are more than 300 points ahead, and they've lost twice as many ships as the enemy team. Camouflage Cat. I think you need to start sinking more enemy ships. Although it looks like the Frederick the Great that sneaked into the cap at Alpha to extinguish your fires and avoid your torpedoes has flipped it, and hopefully is on the way out the other side, so you might be able to sneak in there. Oh shit. I'm guessing that the Alaska B saw your torpedoes and he's just popped his radar, which means you're now in shooting range of both an Alaska B and an Edinburgh, and that's not good news for any destroyer. Oh yes, the Edinburgh. British light cruisers. They might seriously benefit from a buff of armour plating from anything between 27 to 30mm. Well, they might, but they're not getting it. You're still going to be able to farm the shit out of them with high explosive of any calibre. Because British light cruisers armed with 152mm guns are keeping their 16 to 19mm of armour. That's not necessarily a bad thing though, because you'll often find that when you're shooting at a British light cruiser, your armour piercing of sufficiently high calibre just over-penetrates. That's not going to happen to everybody else when they suddenly find they have 27 to 30mm of plating. All this, of course, is work in progress and subject to change, but at the moment you're still going to be able to farm the shit out of British cruisers with high explosive, and the Daring's high explosive is still going to be utterly fucking terrible unless you take the IFHE skill, in which case it will be merely bad. The curious thing here, however, is that as things stand, the Jutland and the Daring's 4.5-inch guns, their 113mm guns with IFHE, can only penetrate 24mm of armour plating, which isn't enough to penetrate the armour of basically almost everything they're ever going to fight. But that's only true if you measure 4.5 inches as 113mm, and it isn't. It's 114.3. If these ships had 114mm guns, they would be able to penetrate 25mm of armour. Yeah, funny that. I was about to write a sternly worded letter of complaint to my Member of Parliament until I did some further research, and it turns out it's actually just the British being crap. We call them 4.5-inch guns, they're actually 4.45-inch guns, so yeah, 113mm after all. Turns out being crap is a genetically inherited British trait, so now you can all see where I got it from. Meanwhile, come on Georgia, Amalfi, slow down. Don't notice that A is being flipped, Sam. Whose smoke screen is that? Is that the Amalfis? Or is... Ooh, somebody just took 2 torpedoes. Hopefully somebody hasn't noticed that... Ah, bollocks. 6 seconds to go, somebody's just slipped into Alpha. Ooh, torpedoes. Hydro up. Is that the Amalfi? It can't be any of the 3 enemy destroyers. They were all spotted all the way over on the other side of the map. It has to be the Amalfi. I'm not sure if that's good news or bad news. Camouflage Cat's torpedoes are still on cooldown, so it's probably very bad news. Yes, it is the Amalfi, and the good news is it looks like he was the one who ate those 2 torpedoes. But he's now so close that he's proximity detecting Camouflage Cat as well as blocking the cap. There are some shots coming in from over the island, but so far they're not particularly accurate. And while Camouflage Cat is dicing with death here, just take a look at the scores. His team hold no caps and they're down to 15 points. There's only 3 ships left alive. They're outnumbered 7-3. And Camouflage Cat has a huge problem here. So he's got the high explosive loaded because AP at that angle would just ricochet. And he has set a fire, which is lucky, and has forced the Amalfi to use his damage control. But he's not doing any damage shooting at the bows. He can't penetrate them with his HE, so he has to come out even further to give himself shots at the superstructure. And that's exactly what the Amalfi was waiting for. Unloads into him, shaves off 1/3 of his health. But he did manage to set another fire, which means the Amalfi is going to die. But it's not Camouflage Cat who gets the credit. It's the Dmitry Donskoy from the north of the island, lobbing shots clean over after taking out the Edinburgh. That was actually the Dmitry Donskoy's 4th kill. So that's bought the team a little bit of time. They still only have 85 points. They're still behind by more than 500. Substantially more than 500. They're now behind by more than 600 because the Charles Martel has managed to get himself sunk. So they're now down to 35 points versus 660. 2 ships versus 5. They still don't have this cap because the Amalfi managed to hit Camouflage Cat and has reset his capture progress. So he really needs to take this cap. It would be best to avoid any trouble until that's been done. Saw some shots from the Dmitry Donskoy when the Georgia was briefly spotted up ahead. The lack of return fire from the Georgia would indicate that somehow, despite the fact that he's in open water, the Dmitry Donskoy managed to make those shots without being spotted. Possibly using the island that's a couple of kilometres ahead of him. Okay, Alpha has been flipped. There's the Georgia again. He must have just fired at the Dmitry Donskoy. Which is not good news for the Dmitry Donskoy, by the way. I mean, that ship has some seriously big guns. The Dmitry Donskoy does still have most of his health remaining, but he's not very heavily armoured, and he's got a Georgia and an Alaska shooting at him. So they can see him, they are returning fire. They can't see Camouflage Cap, but the fact that the central cap is now being flipped right after the Alpha cap gives them a pretty good indication of where to find him. And the Donskoy's radar has just revealed the Alaska B, 7 or so kilometres away, right next to a cap that's being flipped. There are so many things happening in the next couple of seconds that just don't make any sense. Why are the enemy destroyers going after the radar cruiser instead of hunting the destroyer who's flipping the cap? Why is the enemy radar cruiser coming out from behind the island where he can be torpedoed, and why is he not using his radar? Even after the enemy destroyer smokes up. If you know that there's a destroyer here, and he knew that there was a destroyer here because the cap was being flipped, he saw him and he's been shooting at him, and you're in a position where you're behind an island so you can't be torpedoed and you can fire over the top of the island, why would you leave that position to move out? Oh, and looks like he just killed one of the destroyers. Okay, so we know where the Akatsuki went. Oh wait, there's the radar. Oh well, better late than never, I suppose. At least he remembered he had it. Unfortunately for him, he's now got a double fire burning. And he used his damage control to sort out the double flood that was inflicted by those completely predictable torpedoes that he never should have run into in the first place. So, I believe the correct naval terminology for the Alaska's current situation is proper fucked. 55,000 health to nothing in the space of about a minute. All of it completely avoidable. The enemy team are still winning, of course. They're still more than 500 points ahead. They still have 2 of the caps. Although if Camouflage Cat can remain here uncontested for the next minute or so, he might be able to do something about that. That, of course, is going to rely on the enemy Jutland and Kiev continuing to ignore his presence here and continuing to go for the radar cruiser instead. So, fingers crossed. Although they're probably feeling a little more bold about it if they are, because the Donskoy has just used his radar, and there's an extremely suspicious looking smoke screen on the other side of that island. Looks like at least one of the destroyers is definitely in hot pursuit. The thing about the Donskoy, though, is it's the first Russian cruiser that doesn't have completely terrible torpedoes. I mean, prior to the Donskoy, the torpedoes carried by Russian cruisers all hit pretty hard and they're fairly fast, but their range is terrible. Torpedoes on the Donskoy have an 8-kilometre range. So it looks like the Donskoy, guessing that there may be an enemy destroyer coming around the backside of that island, has just sent... Oh, and there is! Well, look at that. The Kiev. How did he get spotted? Did he shoot at the Donskoy? Did he just want to die? Request approved. And the Georgia was spotted over there as well, heading the wrong way. That was a really clever move from the Donskoy, using the island there to shield himself and basically wrong-foot the entire enemy team, who were all chasing him the wrong way around the island. There's the Georgia again. And there's the Jutland. Oh, that's not good news for the Jutland. The Donskoy has massed 180mm gun batteries. Although if the Georgia can get his guns turned around, that's not going to be good news for the Donskoy either. But the Jutland took some hits, and now he's smoked up, which I think means... Yeah, there goes the Donskoy's radar. Looks like he took a big hit from something. And the Georgia is shooting at him. But if he can kill the Jutland, and he has killed the Jutland, he can slip in behind the Jutland smokescreen, and the Georgia won't be able to see him. And if the Georgia continues on that course and speed, Camouflage Cat has a couple of 533mm express deliveries with his name on them. Come on, Donskoy. It looks like he's healing up, although he's taken a lot of armor-piercing damage, so he can't really heal back too much. Oh, and the Georgia is either blind firing or he can see him. Although if the Georgia's just fired, and he has, Camouflage Cat isn't really risking anything from shooting at him, although he's probably going to want to stay more than 7.5 kilometers away so he doesn't get hit by his secondaries. Oh no, we're fine. Smoking up. Come on, Dmitry Donskoy. Actually, you know... I don't think they can win on points. They have to kill the Georgia. Shots out from the Georgia. Oh, that's a bit of a blow to morale. Camouflage Cat, it's all down to you. Donskoy still has some shots in the air, though. The Georgia is burning. If he had damage control, he would have used it by now. But the biggest problem for Camouflage Cat right now is he's inside a smokescreen, and there's nobody else alive. So he needs to do his own spotting. The Georgia's gone undetected. Although I'm pretty sure the Georgia would probably have burned to death. Camouflage Cat isn't really taking too much of a chance here. Yes, he does get spotted, but he was about to pull into cover behind the island. That final salvo actually did some damage and simply hastened the end. Gotta admit, didn't see that one coming. Don't forget, at one point this team were down to 15 points, no caps, and were outnumbered by the surviving enemies by more than 2 to 1. And yet, thanks to some superhuman carrying by Bodyguard Hero in the Dmitry Donskoy and Camouflage Cat in HMS Jutland, they were able to snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. So, well done to both of them. I hope you enjoyed watching their performance, and as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.